Preprocessor directives are lines of code in your program preceded by a hash sign, right? So as you saw in your homework, hello world and several other code snippets, pound include. There's also pound define. If you looked forward or read up on the chapters where they talked about header files, you have probably seen this already, pound if define, right? If not define, but all of these directives, they're preceded by a pound sign. So this is very important. What is important about this is your preprocessor directives, they're not statements, right? So these are not statements. So if you put a semicolon right at the end of these pound include, pound define, totally wrong. This code will not compile. In fact, it will introduce an error. So that's one thing. And the other thing is the preprocessor examines the code before actual compilation of code begins. So preprocessor definition is part of the preprocess part of your compilations, right? We talked about this before. And all of the issues are, these preprocessor directives are resolved, right, at compilation time. So, and this is before runtime, right? So all of these are part of the compilation process in terms of their resolutions, compilation process. Okay, so basically what happens is during compilation, right, the preprocessor encounters these directives and it replaces any occurrences of these directives. So pound include means I'm just going to pull in, right, all of the declarations from your header file somewhere else. So if this is IO stream, then the IO stream header file will get pulled in. Pound define means you're identifying something. It's almost like a global constant. So if you look at the next slide, oh, by the way, there is a chapter on this things. This is also available in your textbook, so make sure you read up on this. This is what we call macro. When you pound define something and say, hey, this pound defined variable in this PI or tab meant this, right? So what is this? This is an identifier and a replacement. So if in your code where you have, this is what we call macros, where you see there is the use of these identifier, you simply, the preprocessor definitely does the global replacement of all of the occurrences of pi with 3.14159. All of the occurrences of tab with the replacement of with this, right? So we know this /t, this is a ASCII character, right? That represents tab, right, in your computer. And this allows you to pretty much just write ones and not having to worry about hard coding, 3.14159, because you could be making mistakes. So lots of times in C++, programmer loves to pound define this thing. And this preprocessor definition usually occurs at the very top of your code or in some sort of header file that later you can pull in. So this is one example of preprocessor definition. Let's look at another macro in the next slide. So this is an example where you can write once and use multiple times, right? Usability is important, where you can declare a function. And this function is a macro, right? It's a template that says, hey, I'm going to replace this with, right? This is identifier. This is the replacement, right? So the replacement code is A times A, but this square is the identifier. So wherever you see identifier square 2, for example, let's say this is 2, then this 2 is the variable A, right? Which becomes 2 times 2, right? And this replacement is done at preprocessor definition time, preprocess, which is part of your compilation. Okay, during the compilation, this will be dynamically replaced. So this is a very useful way of constructing your code. This is an example where you can use preprocessor definitions or macros to specify certain things up front, so you don't have to hard code them in code. You can simply just refer that to your identifier pi, right, or new lines, right, for dynamic replacement. So this is one way to to code up your things versus having to hard code these values, you can specify a pound define. We go into the other types of preprocessor directives, but basically that's what this is. This allows you to, at compile time, dynamically replace various different parts of your code with a hard-coded or some sort of global values to avoid mistakes and to increase, most importantly, reusability of your code.